The beat, it's intoxicating, exhilarating. It's your chance to escape the 9-to-5 that binds you. But for us, this is our 9-to-5, our daily grind, our purpose. Or at least, it was. On the 26th of March 2020, our lives changed forever. Livelihoods, businesses, dreams shattered. An entire industry devastated. Collateral damage in a war no one truly understands or anticipated. What was meant to be temporary quickly became reality.
In 2020, I'd just been coming off the back of a pretty busy touring schedule.
I'd say 10 to 12 shows a month, pretty much for like 20 years, almost non-stop.
Yeah, I think 90% of what we did was pretty much living out of a suitcase and traveling from gig to gig and just spreading our music in as many countries and as many cities and towns as we could.
We had just re-signed the contract for Sonar Festival in Spain, one of the biggest European festivals. We had just signed the contract for Capital Music Festival in Italy, another one in Portugal, and we're really on this growth curve. You know, everything we've been working towards.
Every weekend you travel, you meet amazing people, you work with amazing people, you make magical moments, and then you come back home and you recharge.
A lot of the time, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'd be out, sometimes Sunday. I'd be out half the day because you're obviously flying back from whatever city you were playing at. And yeah, that was pretty much what I had gotten accustomed to anyway.
On the last sort of few tours that happened right before sort of March 2020, we had sort of heard ramblings of coronavirus.
China has identified the cause of the mysterious pneumonia outbreak in Wuhan city.
Authorities said on Sunday there were 59 cases of infections, with 7 patients seriously ill.
As the Department of Health, we just wish to assure the public that South Africa is adequately prepared for active surveillance, early detection, isolation, and prevention of onward spread of coronavirus infection. South Africa has no reported or suspected cases up to date.
And I think it only really hit home when our first tour to Asia was cancelled in April. All of our festival dates were cancelled one by one by one. By the time it got to the major festival, we had one in India and one in Vietnam, 2 major festivals, they pulled the plug and we were just like, okay, what's going on? And then the next thing is we heard that Coachella was cancelled.
Getting the opportunity to play Coachella in 2020 was pretty much a career highlight. It doesn't really get bigger than that.
So great to have you here as you're warming up for Coachella. Only a couple of months to go. A big thing that's an incredible achievement.
So obviously when that gets taken away, that's a pretty big knock, and that was hard for me to deal with. I was kind of like in denial up until that point, but when that news drops, you realize that that's not happening, and that was very difficult for me.
I have a feeling like this. What happens when this comes to us, and all of a sudden we're not working? But at that point, it felt like such a distant, like it was so far away. That Monday, I flew to Port Elizabeth. I went to just go see a family. And then that weekend I came back on the Saturday, the week after, and that Sunday the president spoke. And just like that, man, within like 5 minutes, our whole life came to a standstill.
We need to urgently and dramatically escalate our response. The National Coronavirus Command Council has decided to enforce a nationwide lockdown for 21 days with effect from midnight on Thursday, the 26th of March. This is a decisive measure to save lives of South Africans from...
Sort of came out of nowhere. I remember at the time, it was a very surreal sort of experience when, Cyril sort of sat us down for his first, big family discussion and told us that we were going to go into a 3-week lockdown.
At that stage, I felt really proudly South African. And Yeah, I think all of us in the entertainment world, promoters, artists, producers, kind of stepped back and said, okay, well, this is an enforced holiday. And, you know, especially in our industry, we don't really get holidays. So all of us thought, okay, well, you know, let's take up a hobby for the next 3 weeks and uplift our skills or try something new. And
as a business owner, you know, there was obviously a sense of urgency and I wouldn't really say panic, but a strong level of concern for, you know, how does one actually process having every single streamline of business throttled with no money coming in. Besides that, obviously the families and the people that I'm responsible for that are employed by me and the establishments that I own, you know, that was quite a heavy bearing scenario to process.
As much as it was, I was losing out of money, I was actually grateful just to have some time to actually think about things, because this was just going to be, in the beginning, it was just going to be 3 weeks. I was like, okay, 2 or 3 weeks, you know, even if it goes to a month, that's okay. It's like a forced holiday.
So basically, like, I said, okay, cool, a month, maybe we won't work. I was okay for that. Like, you know, I thought, okay, great, I can have a break, spend time. I just had a new baby. I could just get to chill at home. And like, I tell everyone, I think I watched the whole of Netflix, you know, and I was like, okay, cool, great. Like, you know, we need a break. Like, you know, our lifestyles are hectic.
I'm sure I'll survive. It'll be fine. It's not that rough, but obviously 3 weeks of income, like in your mind, you're like calculating the numbers. You're like, yeah, 3 weeks of income gone, but it's cool. It's for the greater good, those kinds of things, you know. And so you just went with it. Well, you're not going to not go with it.
In an ideal situation, I was okay with it. It was a huge undertaking, and in practice should have done more than it did.
And those 3 weeks for us turned into 6 months. 6 months of not working.
We started getting emails from all of our clients. We postponing, cancelling, postponing, cancelling. Overnight, we lost countless amounts of jobs and, of course, millions of rands with it.
The lines of communication between creatives on the ground, every single layer of staff as well that gets paid by the creative industry as well, just kind of left in the dark. And that was miserable and upsetting because we were left to fend for ourselves.
Some industries went back to work and it kind of like the levels started going down and we thought, okay, level 1, maybe we're going to start getting gigs and that kind of thing. And every time there was an announcement for the levels, the only thing that stood out was except nightclubs.
I'll just remind you of the few things that are still not permitted. There are very few now. It's the nightclubs. They are still closed.
The nightclubs comes with a whole team of people.
It's the club owner that's making money. It's like 10 bar people that are making money. It's the 10, 15 cleaners the next morning that's making money. It's the oak that owns the property making money. There's people that transport the alcohol to the club that are making money. There's people that are selling the alcohol making money.
There was this pocket of people in South Africa or in the world that were just completely disregarded. And there's no help, there's no relief. It was like we didn't matter, you know? I kind of felt sometimes like, did I choose the right industry? Like, do I actually matter?
So many of people that I work with, that I used to work with every weekend and every week that have been suffering, you know, a lot of people who are in the background who don't get to have their songs on the radio, you know, the techies, the lighting guys, the sound guys, so many people who rely on the music industry to make a living and be out there and be at shows couldn't do that. You know, there's no sound guys at on online shows, you know, and that's really what broke my heart was, you know, hearing from those guys and wondering like, geez, how are these guys surviving? You know, if I'm struggling, how are these guys managing, you know? So that was difficult, I think.
Backstory of how 2020 went for me is I'm a lover of dogs, and my dogs died. You know, my business was my life. My business died. Towards the end of 2020, we sort of had some relief where we could produce some shows. So we did a couple of small showcases, and actually on the way home from work one night, I got hijacked. To the point where I woke up on the Monday morning after I got hijacked, and I just thought to myself, what the fuck am I doing this all for?
I mean, when some lockdown restrictions were eased and people were allowed to meet more than like just their family in the house, even my Spotify numbers went back up again. When everyone else is going back to work and they're talking to you as if you're like everything's back to normal for you, and you're like, I guess you just get tired of explaining like, no, everything's not back to normal for me. I haven't like made really any money from gigs for over a year now, and people are like, life's basically exactly the same, except I don't have to go to the office. It's pretty great, eh? And you just get tired. If I'm honest, you just get tired of explaining to someone your circumstance. So you're just like, it's so great, buddy, so great.
You're still looking at the global situation, and you're still going, well, this is not the end. It can't be the end. This might be a little break in the whole situation. So you kind of make the most of it, and it's sort of timed in the sense that December we closed down again, and which is a sort of point where for DJs and artists such as myself is like pretty much the month of the year where you make most of your money and you play the most of your shows. That was obviously all taken away.
A second wave appears and everything gets shut down, and just this little glimmer of hope, I guess, the lights just get switched off and you're back in the dark.
Well, South Africa is experiencing its second wave of COVID-19 infections.
Cabinet met this morning and has decided to put the country on an adjusted level 3 from level 1.
A lot of people had held off doing gigs. A lot of promoters had held off throwing events so that they could do it in December, knowing that people were prepared to go out. And we were now moving into level 1, and we were able to get out of this restricted way of living, thinking that everything would be fine. And a couple of gigs happened end of November, early December, and there was so much backlash, and people were saying that there's super spreader events, and
now we had to deal again with all the cancellations, again with the refunds, and having made no money. So we were gearing up for this period, working in good faith that we were going to generate the revenue, and we started doing it, and then it just got shut again. And it was just like the feeling of, okay, there was hope, and then back to square one.
Everything just shut down again. And we just didn't have the cash flow available to us to sustain ourselves any longer. In December, January, there was basically no money. There was no cash available to us. There was no assistance from government. Banks were down our necks for vehicle payments. Landlords were down our necks for warehouse payments. And January was probably the lowest month that I've had on a personal level.
It was very crazy. I'm lucky I've got a support system at home. Otherwise, I probably would have lost my home. I did lose my car. I had to sell some of my gear. So, and I'm not embarrassed about it. You can't be. You have to survive. So you got to do what you got to do.
The difficult thing for us was that not having any communication from anyone of authority, both globally and locally, and everyone's just been like, and as an artist, it's a very difficult thing to understand, unpack, and navigate, especially if you've worked your entire life to hone a skill in a certain area. It's not like we were not able to work, or not wanting to work. It's like we were told we were not allowed to. And there's a very clear difference in being prevented from working as just not working. It's very different.
There was definitely a sense of frustration, and for a little while, a bit of anger towards the throttling of our game and our industry. I'm fortunate in a lot of ways to not just depend on the DJing side, but at the same time, the compounding responsibility and the risk linked to, the pandemic and the lockdown and the effect on my businesses obviously put me in a category that, it was very stressful.
It's very frustrating being in this industry at this point in time when your livelihood and your happiness really kind of hedges on being able to do, have gatherings and be around other people and be social. And when, it's very tricky when you get the finger pointed at you because, you saying you're sort of the cause of, or I'm talking about the sort of live events industry in general, that you're the cause of, super spreading events and all of that kind of stuff. When all you really want to do is just being in the industry and being the artist that we are, just get back in front of people and do what we love.
The reality is if you're really passionate about something, you dedicate your entire life to it, and it's taken away without you having any say in it. What replaces that? What replaces that purpose? What replaces that meaning that music brings to somebody that is prepared to sacrifice so much to just pursue a dream?
Slowly, bit by bit, all the shows again were getting postponed, and then they were getting cancelled, and it was really disheartening. It was quite a thing to sort of think that we'd come through the worst of it, and that we were, finally getting back to business, and only to have it sort of swept out from under you again. And once again, it was probably, there were some moments where it was very super depressing. But I've really, really tried hard not to focus on that. And so again, when I think of like, what are the things that have kept me happy or kept me going, it's been my family. It's been my bond with my wife, with my kid. If I had to say what my darkest moment was during lockdown, it's quite a personal one, but it is, it's worth sharing, is that my wife was actually diagnosed with cancer, and that came out of nowhere for us. It was a complete shock, and we almost found out by accident, which is the lucky part of that. But then during that time, she had to have 2 surgeries, and it was going through that experience of her having to go to hospital. I wasn't allowed in the hospital. I couldn't be there with her. I couldn't be there by her side when she came out of surgery. And I mean, she was in hospital, I think, collectively for about 10 days or so. And obviously had to come home and recover here. It was, I mean, not just like one of the darkest periods of lockdown, but certainly one of the darkest periods of my life. But it gave me a massive, massive sense of perspective for everything else that was going on. In a time where I could have been, fixated on my career, playing music, parties, when something like that happens to you, it really sort of focuses your attention on what's important, and, to not let things that aren't that serious, get to you. And although, music and performing and lockdown are serious, when the person you love is staring down something like cancer, that just blows everything else out the water.
I've been very lucky over the last sort of 10 years in my career that I've received a lot of positive reinforcements. I've achieved a lot personally, and I've kind of gone through the last at least 5 or 6 years pretty much on a high, staying positive about everything. And achievements were sort of followed by more achievements and more achievements. And so I kind of had all of this feeding back into me. And I never had to sort of feel the way that I feel now at this point. Obviously, I kind of got through 2020 staying pretty positive and keeping the music going and everything. But I think it's kind of hit me now in 2021.
The way going forward for everybody in our industry is to talk. If you're suffering from depression, if you're suffering from anxiety, if you're suffering from writer's block, there's no point sitting at home doing nothing. I made a concerted effort towards the end of last year to just get onto the phone, to just meet people, to just see what other people are doing, because the reality is everybody in our industry is going through this, but nobody wants to talk about it. And I think the minute you start engaging with people that are on the same level as you or in the same industry as you, you start understanding that everybody is in the same fucked up situation. So everybody's going through the depression, the insomnia, the anxiety.
I get asked it all the time, when do you think we're going to get back to work? When do you see this being over? When do you think it's going to be safe to party again? And I don't think there is really an accurate answer that anyone can really give. Certainly the one thing I've figured out from all this is that you cannot predict the future. You cannot predict what's going to happen. No one could have predicted COVID. And yet here we are.
I mean, it might not be the best thing to hear when you're kind of feeling a little bit down, but you could channel this time and energy into sort of growing your skill set and just improving, so that when things do open up, you can hit the ground running.
Let me put it this way: if you were a hobbyist DJ to begin with, if you were someone who you've got the day job, you know, music has been the side hustle for a while, and you're creative, you're making the music, you're doing whatever. Obviously it goes without saying, keep it that way, because yes, keep the job. Like, yes, keep the stability right now, more than anything else. But keep the fire alive in what you're doing. If you are someone that loves making music, just don't worry about getting the DJ bookings. Like, yeah, cool, maybe you made more money from DJ bookings than you made from releasing music. But now is the time where you can go, I go to work, I come home, maybe I go for like a drink or two with my mates at like, you know, and then I make music over the weekends, whatever. Now would be the time to start building up catalogs that you can start shopping out to labels overseas, or labels locally if that's what you want to do. Major labels, independent labels. Now is the time where, funnily enough, as much as everyone should be at home and able to be creative, if you are in the position that you are feeling inspired, you're in a minority.
You know, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling worried, if you're feeling depressed, or if you're feeling anxious, I can encourage you by saying that you're not alone, that it's okay to feel that way. That's totally okay. It's totally understandable. There's so many other people like that. Please, if you can, reach out to people that love you and understand you. These are crazy times, and it's really understandable to be down and to be out, you know. But just know that you're loved, and this times will get better.
From my perspective, the best thing to do right now is just take care of yourself, whether it's financially, whether it's emotionally, mentally. Find something that engages you, find something that gives you purpose. If you find yourself in a position like I know I have been in, where you're questioning what's the point in carrying on, you're feeling despondent, you're feeling depressed, speak to people. Get out of the house. I mean, we're very fortunate in that we can actually go out and still do things. Yes, we might not be able to go out and play music live, but you can go out, you can play golf, you can play a sport, you can go and sit in a park with your friends. A lot of people around the world can't do that right now, so we're very fortunate that we can do that. And yeah, if you need somebody to talk to, there are channels to do that. I'm always prepared to talk about people and the way that they feel. And if I can help in any way, that's the whole reason that I put together this video.